welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something, well, really quite fascinating based on our source material, arithmomania. If you break down the Greek roots, you get arithmos, meaning number.
And mania, which is compulsion.
Exactly. So at its heart, we're talking about a compulsion tied to numbers.
Right. And it's important to sort of frame this from the start. Arithmomania is often seen as one way obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, can show up.
Oh.
So our mission, let's say, for this deep dive, using these excerpts we have, is to really understand what it is, how it actually works, and some interesting places it pops up.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that core compulsion first. It's not just like enjoying counting, is it?
No, not at all. It's described as this really fundamental, sometimes quite overpowering need to count things, actions, or objects.
A need. Okay.
Yeah. And the source gives some pretty clear examples. Think about someone feeling they absolutely have to count every step on a staircase.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe the letters and words they see or hear. It can be things like floor tiles, ceiling panels, even like the lines on the highway when you're driving.
That constant counting. And it's not just the counting itself. There's often this other layer, right? This feeling that they must do it a certain number of times.
Exactly. That's a key part. This feeling that if they don't count correctly or reach a specific number or do it a certain number of times, well, something bad will happen.
The source calls them alleged calamities.
Yeah, alleged calamities, which really points to the anxiety involved, doesn't it?
It really does. That sense of needing to perform an action just right, number-wise, to sort of stave off disaster.
That's a good way to put it. It's that anxiety, that what if, that really fuels the compulsive repetition.
Okay, so that's the basic counting. But then it gets more complex, right? The source suggests it can evolve.
It really can. It's not always just simple counting 1, 2, 3. It can develop into these quite intricate systems.
Systems, how so?
Well, individuals might start assigning numerical values to, well, pretty much everything. People, objects, events going on around them.
Like giving everything a number score.
Sort of, yeah. It's like they're trying to find some kind of maybe hidden order or coherence in the world through these numbers, creating their own logic almost.
Okay, building a world out of numbers in a way.
You could say that. And what's really interesting is how the material we're looking at connects these numbers to past events. Certain numbers might get strongly linked to specific memories, and focusing on that number can actually trigger kind of repetitively recalling that associated event.
So the numbers become anchors for memories. Potent ones, it sounds like.
Very potent. And that compulsion we mentioned, doing something a specific number of times. The source hints this might sometimes link back to a past event that felt satisfying.
Oh, interesting. Like trying to recapture a good feeling through the number.
That's the idea. The source mentions a particular satisfied event. It makes you wonder how these compulsions might get sort of accidentally reinforced over time through these associations.
Right, and this counting. It's not always obvious, is it?
No, good point. The text makes it clear it can be overt. You might see or hear someone counting, or totally covert, just happening silently inside their head.
So you wouldn't necessarily know.
You really wouldn't.
Okay, let's connect this more firmly to the psychology side. The source explicitly mentions OCD, referencing Yarior Tobias and Nezaroglu from back in '97.
Yes, that's a key reference. Their work defines arithmomania as a pretty common feature of OCD.
Common, okay.
Characterized by this almost endless mental engagement with math, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, often without any real purpose or end goal. It's the doing of it, the process, that becomes the compulsion.
Just the act itself. Fascinating. And historically, people noticed this quite early on, didn't they? Jean-Martin Charcot.
Yeah, Charcot. Way back in the late 1800s. It's fascinating because he was already identifying these involuntary, impulsive ideas.
Impulsive ideas.
Right. And he saw them as part of what we now call Gilles-de-la-Tourette syndrome, or GTS.
Okay.
And the source that we have from Schiffer, Rao, and Fogel points out that Charcot specifically included arithmomania, this intense focus on counting in numbers, as one of these things. He even linked it to the tics, the impulsive movements seen in Tourette's.
Wow, so he was seeing connections between compulsive thoughts and movements even then.
It gives you a glimpse into how the understanding was developing, definitely.
Okay, shifting gears a bit now from the clinical side to, well, folklore. This is surprising. Vampires.
It seems strange, doesn't it? But yeah, European folklore often gives vampires this very specific type of arithmomania.
Which is?
The uncontrollable urge to count small, scattered items, like seeds or grains of millet.
Seriously? So how does that play out?
Well, it becomes a way to escape them. The classic trick is to spill a bag of seeds or grain in their path. The idea is the vampire is compelled to stop and count every single one.
Huh. That's quite a specific weakness.
It is. It makes you wonder, why that compulsion for a powerful mythical creature. Maybe it represents this idea of being bound by an internal, maybe irrational need for order, even when you possess great power. Order versus chaos, maybe?
That's a really interesting thought. Okay, so folklore.
Uh,
What about more modern popular culture?
oh, yeah. Definitely shows up there, too. The source brings up Count Von Count from Sesame Street.
Yes, the Count. 1. 2.
He's probably the most famous example, right? A character completely defined by his love, his need to count everything.
A very friendly version of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lighthearted, makes the idea familiar, but then there are more serious portrayals, too.
Like?
Well, the source mentions a recent example from Stephen King in his 2024 novella, Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream.
Oh, from the new collection, You Like It Darker.
That's the one. There's a character, Inspector Franklin Jalbert, who the text says explicitly lives with arithmomania. And it even mentions a New York Times piece that picked up on this character detail, so it's clearly something contemporary writers are still exploring.
So it's not just a historical curiosity or a kid's show trope. It's being used in serious fiction now to explore, what? Anxiety, control?
Probably all of the above. It seems like a compelling way for storytellers to get into the character's head, show that internal struggle, that need for order, maybe the anxiety underneath it all. It says something that this specific compulsion resonates.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together.
Yeah.
We started with the basics of arithmomania, the compulsion to count, its Greek roots.
Right, and how it's generally understood as being on the OCD spectrum.
We talked about how it manifests counting steps, tiles, letters.
But also evolving into these more complex systems of assigning numbers to things, linking them to memories.
Yeah, and whether it's done out loud or just internally. Then we saw its history, with Charcot noticing it way back.
And its strange appearance in folklore with the seed-counting vampires.
Which is still wild to think about. And finally, its place in pop culture, from the very familiar Count Von Count.
To much more recent literary characters like King's Inspector Jalbert, it covers quite a range.
It really does. It shows how this specific psychological pattern kind of echoes through different parts of our experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So to wrap up, here's maybe a final thought for you, something to consider. We know our brains are wired to look for patterns, right? To create order out of chaos.
Definitely. It's fundamental.
So could arithmonia be, in a way, an extreme version of that? That very human drive for order just taken to a point where it becomes disruptive or distressing?
Like an overdrive of pattern seeking.
Maybe. And if you think about it like that, it makes you wonder, what other everyday habits or behaviors, things we think are totally normal, might actually exist on a spectrum with these more intense compulsions? Where's the line?
That's definitely something to chew on after this deep dive is over. Makes you think.